Hello everyone, welcome to Evisoft. My name is Amit and today we are going to see Junit plus Mockito with Spring Boot application. Now here I have divided this Junit series in three parts. In first part we will have small Spring Boot application with CURD operation in which we will choose one method and we will write our Junit test cases for positive scenario, negative scenario and exception scenario. In part 2 we will see what is mock and how to mock any class. In part 3, we will write a unit for REST controller and private method. So that's all about this three part. Now let's start with first part and let's start with the Spring Boot application. Now let's start with Spring Boot application. So right click new Spring Starter project. Here you can provide a name, anything that you want. Click here and here you need to select only Spring Web and then uh, Spring Data, Spring Data to perform database operation. I'm using the PostgreSQL. So you have to select here Postgre driver, next and finish. Now we are going to write a CURD operation with that application. But to save the time, I have already created one employee management application. You can see here. So it will save over time. Now let's see the structure of that employee management application, and then we will start writing the units for that application. So here we have packages called as controller, then served model, repository, service. In controller package, we have controller called as employee controller. Then in service package, we have employee service IMPL, in which we have written some logic to perform database operation. And then we have employee repository interface extended from the JPA repository. And then we have employee entity, which contains employee ID and employee name. Now let's start with writing the units. So here in that folder structure, you can see there is a folder called as src slash taste dot slash java. So here we need to write a units. So for that we need to create first package. The package name is same. Let's say I want to write a units for service package or service class. That service class is present in the service package. So create your same package called as service. So demo dot service. Inside here, you need to write a class called as service IMPL test. For example, if you want to write units for employee service IMPL, then here you need to write a test class called as employee service IMPL test. So write a class name employee service IMPL test. Finish. Once you write here, then you need to write or use one annotation here. That annotation is called, I have already copied that annotation called as extended with Mockito extension dot class. So copy this, I'm copying this and pasting here. Okay, so import this, you have to import. That's it. Now after this, we need to write a method to test particular method. Okay, to test particular method of our service classes. So our service class will have multiple method definitely. Now let's select any method where we want to write a unit test case. Okay, so open employee service IMPL. Now here, if you see, there is a validate method. Okay, and there is a save method. In save, we are saving the data inside the database. And here in validate method, we are validating that employee object uh, which are provided by the user through the postman or browser. Now what we are doing here, we are checking that employee.get employee name is null. If it is null, then throw an exception called as a runtime exception. Otherwise, check employee name is length of employee name is greater than 1 or not. If yes, then return true. Otherwise, return false. That means the validation is failed. That's it. Now, the next thing is how to write a JUnit for that validate method. Let me tell you. So we have class called as a employee service IMPL test. So write here one method public void. Then method name should be validate test or positive. There are multiple scenario while testing validate method. First is positive scenario, second is negative scenario, and third is exception scenario. Okay, so we will discuss this thing. Let's see. Okay, so method name can be positive. You can give any name, but it should be meaningful. Valid positive taste. That's it. And here provide an annotation called as @taste. Now to test that validate method, we need to object of employee service, because this validate method is present inside the employee service IMPL. So in our normal controller or in our Spring Boot application, we are using the @autowire to inject that service IMPL. But here you have to inject, or you have to use annotation called as a inject mock. @inject mock, and here use that employee service IMPL variable. That means it will get injected here using the annotation. Now by using that variable, we can call validate method. So employee service dot validate, and here it is asking employee object that we don't have. So for this, we need to create employee object. Employee, it's a dummy employee object. Employee is equal to new employee, and provide here data. So employee dot set ID. Let's say ID is 1, and set name. Let's say set name. Name is equal to John. Now we are good. What is the problem here? Set name. Let me check. Set employee name. Okay. Now here, if you see, our data is ready. Employee object is ready. Now pass this employee object to validate method. Now that validate method is responsible for to validate employee object. So here, if we are passing valid data, for example, we are not passing null employee name. Another thing is we are passing the employee name is greater than length of employee name is greater than 4, then it should return true. Let's see inside the validate method. So what is implementation of validate method? We are checking the name is null or not. If it is null, then throw an exception. Another thing is the length of name is greater than 1 or not. If it is greater than 1, then validation is successful, return true. Otherwise, return false. Okay. So here in validate positive test method, we are passing valid employee object. Okay. So if we are passing valid employee object, then the validation should be successful and result should be true. That means let's catch here boolean b boolean actual result. This is actual result. Okay, this is actual result. So as per our expectation, the actual result should be true. That means our expected result is true. So so let's compare the actual result and expected result. If it is true, then that means that test case or that generic test is passed. So how to compare this? Assert. There is one method called as assert equal. Assert equal. Here it is asking for expected result. So our expected result for this test case is true. And here the actual result is this. That's it. So our first generic case is ready. Now what we are doing here, we are calling that validate method with that data, and then we are receiving the actual result. We are comparing that actual result with expected result. Our expected result is true, and this is a method provided by the Junit, which is responsible for to compare this both result. If expected result is equal to actual result, then our test case is passed. That means passed. Now let's run this Junit test case. How to run it? It's very simple. Right click, run Junit. Now you can see here the result. So result is green. That means the test case is passed. Here you can see valid positive test is passed. Now if you are providing here false, that means let's say our expected result is false, but actual result is equal to true, then that test case will get fail. Let's see. Now you can see cross is there, blue cross is there, and the test case is failed. Here you can see in the report failure is equal to 1. So we have run one test case and failure is equal to 1. That's it. So in that way, we can able to run unit test case and we can validate that our code. We can validate that code. Okay, that's it. Now let's write a unit test case for negative scenario. So what is the negative scenario here? The negative scenario, let me show you in the method. The negative scenario is if we are passing invalid name. Let's say we are passing a name or a name whose length is less than 1 or 1. Then it will not go inside this if condition. It will not return true or validation successful is equal to true. It will return false. So this is a negative scenario. Now we are going to write here the negative scenario. So for that, what we can do? Write a method public void validate negative test. That's it. And then here create an employee object. So I am using copy this object and pasting here. After this, here we are passing valid name. So pass here invalid name. Let's say J. Okay, so the length of name is not greater than J. So sorry 1. Then it will return false. Now we are expecting false because this name. Now call that employee service impl.validate method. Validate method and pass here that employee whose name is invalid. So here we are expecting actual result is equal to false. Okay, and the next thing is here we need to compare actual result and expected result. So our actual result is this, and we are expecting. Okay, so here we did something wrong. So here expected, and here let me check. Okay, here we need to provide expected result. So expected result is false because we are passing invalid name, and here pass actual result. That's it. And here provide annotation called as @test. Now our code is ready. Let's run all the test cases. Run Junit. Now you can see both the test cases are pass. Both are green. Okay, so we have written two scenarios, positive, another is negative. Now the third thing is, let's see what is the third scenario. So third scenario is here. If employee name is equal to null, then it should throw an exception. If employee name is equal to null, then it should throw exception. So this block is not covered yet under the units. So we need to cover. That means if we pass the null name is equal to null, then it should throw exception. So for that, write another unit test case. So here public void validate exception. Okay, exception scenario. Let's say you can give any name, but it should be meaningful. Test. That's it. And here provide annotation called as a test. What is the problem here? Let me check. Okay, let's check. Okay, our code is good. Then what is the problem? Let me check again. There is a missing of curly brace. Oh, everything is good. Then why it is giving the error? Okay, okay. Let's complete this method. That is the problem. Okay. Now here, uh, let's call this method. Once we call this method, okay. So before calling this method, we need a data. So copy this, paste here, and here we are passing name is equal to null. If name is equal to null, then it should throw exception. That's it. So how to call that method and how to check that exception? There is an exception. So for this, there is one method, static method assert through. Assert throws. Here we need to provide expected exception. So let's see what is the expected exception. Here we need or we are expecting runtime exception. So copy this and paste here dot class. So we are expecting runtime exception. And now here call here method. Which method? We need to call here that validate method. Okay, so here it is asking for a lambda expression. Uh, so if they do, those who don't know about the lambda expression and functional interface, they can go through our series which I have already given. Okay, on the Java. So right now let's understand. Okay, so here we are calling the class. Which class? Sorry, method, validate method. How? Employee service impl dot validate and pass that employee whose name is null. Now, if it is throwing a runtime exception, then that means our test case is passed. So let's run. Now, all the three generated cases are passed. If it is not throwing, if that code is not throwing expected expression, that means that that generated test case will get failed. But here it is passing, okay, or it is throwing the runtime exception. That's it. So these are the three scenarios that we covered in case of validate method. So that's all about the part one. In part two, we will see how to mock the service and how to use that mock for testing some injected services. So that's all about part two. If you like, please share and subscribe. Thank you.